Hey everyone. Now, just in case you're here for the TLDR, basically Binance was caught trading with internal accounts against their customers. They were caught not properly registering users and not checking if they were registered in the US. They were caught letting US citizens continue to trade on their platform and basically trying to sweep it all under the rug. But if you're here to take a look at the entire document, let's get into it. Hey everyone. Today I thought I'd take a quick look at the CFTC versus Binance case that just came out a few days ago, and just take a look at and highlight the important bits of the case, because there are many pages to this document, 74 to be exact, so I'll just be going over the important ones today. But first of all, just a bit of context. The CFTC is the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. They basically regulate futures trading of commodities in the US. And if you want to find this document yourself, just check the description, or to make sure you're getting the most up-to-date one, just head down here. We've got press release, CFTC charges Binance. We'll just go to this page here and just zoom in here. We can see complaint, Binance Holdings Limited et al. So we'll click on this, and now we've got the official PDF. So let's take a look at the important parts of the document. So the top, basically just laying out what's going on. So we've got the CFTC, obviously. First, Shenpeng Zhao, the CEO of Binance, Binance Holding Limited, the company, Binance Holdings IE Limited, Binance Services Holdings, and Samuel Lim. Now, you may not have heard of this Samuel Lim's name. So according to this Ars Technica article, just down here on the third paragraph, we can see Samuel Lim, Binance's former Chief Compliance Officer. That's right, they're going after someone who doesn't even work there anymore. And just coming to the bottom of page 1, we've got the summary. Now this is made up of 10 different sections, going from 1 to 10 all the way down here. So let's just take a look at the important parts anyway. So the CFTC says Binance operates the world's largest centralized digital asset exchange. And going to CoinGecko, yep, we can see that's definitely right. In the last 24 hours did 7 billion of trading volume, while the second is just at 1 billion, which is Coinbase. Now, while Coinbase is a public company and has to file a lot of different documents with the US in order to stay compliant, Binance is basically fully controlled by Zhao, or CZ. Coming down to section 2, they say that no later than July 2019 and through to the present, Binance was under control by CZ and Sam Lim, who have solicited and accepted orders, accepted property to margin, and operated a facility for the futures, options, swaps, and leverage retail commodity transactions. Now, the futures, options, and swaps, that's what the CFTC primarily deals in. Now, they're only talking about Bitcoin, ETH, and Litecoin here. Even though Binance does offer hundreds of coins you can leverage trade on, they're mainly just focusing on these three for now. Coming to section 3, they say since the launch of the platform in 2017, Binance has taken a calculated phased approach to increase its US presence, despite publicly stating its purported intent to block or restrict customers located in the US from accessing its platform. Now, you may be a bit confused if you're in the US, because you probably just go to Binance US, which is what you'll get redirected to if you log on to Binance.com from the US. Because as you can see, I'm in Australia, it obviously knows that, so it'll say, hey, you're in the US, please go to Binance.us. So this section 3 is basically saying Binance.com may have said they're trying to block people in the US, but as it states at the bottom, CZ and Lim have all chosen to ignore those requirements, which certainly does not look good for Binance.com. Section 4 is basically just saying because they ignored this, it has been quite profitable for them, and just in August of 2020, Binance.com earned $63 million just from derivatives. That doesn't include spot trading or anything else like that. Coming down to section 5, the CFTC is claiming that Binance obscures the identities and locations of the entities operating the trading platform. Now, this is certainly true because Binance have shown to had offices in Singapore, Malta, Dubai, Tokyo. They weren't exactly forthcoming with that information. CZ himself said that Binance is headquartered wherever he is located at any point in time, which obviously makes it a lot harder for the US to mail a complaint letter to wherever he is at any point in time. And this is even more obvious because they say they want to keep countries clean of violations of laws by not landing .com anywhere. Because let's say if they have Binance.com situated in Singapore, well, the US could just mail a letter to Singapore. But since CZ is saying they don't land the .com domain anywhere, well, makes it a bit harder for the US. Coming down to section 6, this really doesn't look great for Binance, because it's basically saying Binance assisted customers located in the US to evade the blocking of the website by using a VPN. Section 7, basically just repeating what it says before, never registered with the CFTC, we're very upset. Now for those who actually care about the law, Section 8 goes into the specific violations on these 3 paragraphs here, these ones down here, on these paragraphs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Section 9 says, unless we do something, then they're just going to continue to do this, and it's not fair. Section 9 is just a bit of waffle, saying if we don't do anything, they're likely to continue, which is pretty obvious. Section 10 isn't really that important. Section 11 and 12 aren't really that important either. Now the parties bit, basically just saying who's involved, so we can skip this. We've got the CFTC, CZ, and all the companies down here. And if we keep coming down, this is all basically just boring stuff. We've got Sigma chain. Now this part here is basically just saying what the CFTC can do, so we'll skip this. And a bit of explaining of what crypto is, how it works, so we can basically just skip this part. Coming down to page 14, we've got facts, which is basically just a bit more information on how Binance works. Although before skipping this whole thing, we'll just come down to section 52, where it says Binance officers, employees, and agents have used numerous messaging applications. Alright, most companies probably do that, that's all good. In addition to email and internal messaging applications, Binance personnel have at least used Telegram, which is somewhat of a private messaging application, WeChat, primarily used in China, and Signal, which is probably what raises some eyebrows. Because if we come to the Signal website, we can see we've got state-of-the-art end-to-end encryption, which means no one can see the messages, and if they do try to see the message, this is what they'll see, until the person at the other end has the actual keys, because it's all based around privacy. And one of the features they obviously used was the auto-delete function. Now, while some people may use it for privacy, the CFTC is saying, they used it to cover their tracks. Section 54 basically says CZ used Signal with auto-delete with numerous Binance officers, employees, and agents for a wide varying purposes. And we can see down here, we've got a chat between CZ, the head of sales, big data, senior members of the Binance's VIP team, compliance consults, an accounting employee, senior operations personnel, and some of the group chats were just titled Finance, HR, MKT HR, which is probably Marketing HR, and CEO Office. And this is where things get quite not good for Binance, because on section 55, the CFTC is saying that CZ instructed Binance officers, employees, and agents to use Signal to communicate with US customers. Not a good look, which is most likely going to be instructions for US customers on how to use a VPN and set up an account with Binance.com and get around their compliance checks. Next sections are just a bit of waffle, a bit more information on how Binance works, the products they offer, but stopping at section 67, things get a little more hairy for Binance yet again. We can see that CZ was directly involved in Binance's product offerings, which isn't exactly uncommon for a CEO, but if we come down a little here, CZ is referencing gamified crypto trading, and this was a message to some employee, we don't know who, but they basically told CZ, yep, they've done some research on it, blah blah blah. Most of the gamification trading are based on some complex derivative financial instruments, binary options, exotic options, or perpetual swaps. And they say the reason why we did the futures battle is to lower the barrier of complex financial products and increase conversion and retention rate. Basically get more money. And then they list these two things, which is fairly obvious, because if they make it look too much like gambling, other regulatory companies may not get too happy. So while the products they offer may just be straight up gambling, they're saying we need to make sure it doesn't look like gambling. And because it is gambling, someone might get addicted, so they need to enhance responsible trading, whatever that is. On section 69, this is where things get not so nice for Binance, because they're basically saying that Binance traded on its own platform, which is kind of what Alameda Research did with FTX, with 300 house accounts, that were all directly or indirectly controlled by CZ, and accounts owned by Merit Peak, which are controlled by CZ, and Sigma Chain, which were also controlled by CZ. And he also traded with 2 individual accounts. Section 70 basically says Binance didn't tell its customers that Binance was trading on its own platform. Section 71 basically says the accounts Binance used themselves were not actually subject to any anti-fraud, anti-manipulation surveillance, or controls that Binance would have on its usual customers, and were exempt from its insider trading policy. How convenient. 72 is just a bit of waffle. 73 basically says that Binance had employed 60 people in the US. Don't forget this is Binance.com, not Binance.us. And 74 says during the relevant period, Binance enlisted US residents to act as Binance Angels, to solicit and interact with US customers, to try and recruit new customers into Binance.com. And in return, these angels would get benefits like invitations to events and free Binance stuff. Yay! 75 is a bit of a specific case, because it's talking about since the early days of Binance, CZ knew US customers were trading on the platform. And in 2018, a US trading firm emailed CZ directly to get an account on Binance. And they even made it clear that they were a US citizen and provided the company's US passport, US Illinois driver's license to CZ himself. 76 is basically just more copy pasta and just saying CZ and Lim knew that the people trading on Binance.com were US customers. Section 77 is a bit spicy. Now this graph clearly shows that the US, just in June and July, accounted for well over a quarter of their trading volume. Coming down to section 84, they say Binance is so effective at obfuscating its location and the identities of its operating companies that it has even confused its own chief strategy officer, such as in 2020, he was quoted as saying Binance is a Canadian company. Then they had to issue a correction saying, oh no guys, don't worry, it's an international company. In section 89, they say throughout the relevant period, Binance purposely grew, maintained and simultaneously concealed its US customer base. And this is where things really get bad. They say failing to implement an effective AML, which is anti-money laundering, program that is required for financial institutions to detect and prevent terrorist financing or other criminal activities. So the CFTC could also slap on possible terrorist financing and other criminal activity. Now they apparently also had a lack of KYC, which is know your customer. So whoever signs up for an account, they need to provide ID and so on. But since May 2022, Binance hadn't filed a single suspicious activity report in the US, despite having done it in other jurisdictions. Down on section 93, they say in June 2019, Binance launches Binance.us. And for the terms of use, they say Binance is unable to provide services to any US person, and that was effective after 90 days of the notice. Although on section 94, it says Binance claimed it had begun to block customers based on their IP address, so basically anyone they thought was located in the US based on IP. Apparently all Binance actually did was just add a pop-up window for when they logged in using a US IP, but they could still log into their account, deposit and trade on Binance.com. And all it did was ask them to say, hey, are you a US citizen, yes or no? And if they clicked, no, I'm not a US citizen, they could go back to trading like normal. In section 95, they had a report showing how much of the Binance.com customer base was from the US. In January 2020, approximately almost 20% of the customers were from the US. On section 96, there's a bit between someone who works at Binance and Lim, saying, then you will also know as a company, we are probably not going to remove the no KYC email registration because it's too painful. I think CZ understands that there is risk in doing so, but I believe this is something which concerns our firm and its survivability. If Binance forces mandatory KYC, then competing digital exchanges will be very, very happy, most likely referring to Coinbase and other non-KYC exchanges. Section 98 says, in August 2021, Binance announced that all users had to verify their accounts and provide a government ID. And apparently only 2 months later, not even half of the customers had gone through the KYC process. On section 101, they say in 2019, a letter sent from Binance to some US regulator, they say our compliance program provides for AML and CFT controls to ensure the safe and legitimate use of our platforms. Binance screens all its customers prior to the establishment of a business relationship or undertaking a transaction against the OFAC, EU, UK, and Hong Kong sanctions. But from the sections above, it turns out they certainly did not. On section 103, they claim Binance intentionally tried to hide the scope of its compliance program's ineffectiveness from business partners. In 2020, Binance underwent a compliance audit to satisfy a request from Paxos, a stablecoin issuer. But apparently they purposely engaged a compliance officer that would just do a half-assed individual sub-audit on geofencing to buy us some more time. And someone working at Binance under the money laundering reporting officer role said that she needed to write a fake annual MRLO report to Binance, which isn't that great. 104 is especially not good for Binance, because they say internally, Binance officers, employees, and agents have acknowledged that the Binance platform has facilitated potentially illegal activities. For example, in February 2019, after receiving information regarding Hamas transactions on Binance, Lim explained to a colleague that terrorists usually send small sums as large sums constitute as money laundering. And they say, you can barely buy an AK-47 for $600. And Lim said, like, come on, they are here for crime. We see bad, but we close two eyes. 105 says Lim's internal discussions with compliance colleagues illustrate that Binance has tolerated Binance customers' use of the platform to facilitate illicit activity. For example, in July 2020, a Binance employee wrote to Lim and another colleague asking if a customer whose recent transaction were very closely associated with illicit activity and over $5 million US worth of his transactions were indirectly sourced from questionable sources and should be off-boarded, or if it was in the class of cases where we would advise the user that they can make a new account. In response, Lim said, can let him know to be careful with his flow of funds, especially from darknet like Hydra. Now, the Hydra darknet was only shut down in April of 2022 and was one of the biggest darknet markets online. And Lim went on to say, he can come back with a new account, but this one has to go. It's tainted. In 106, Lim went on to say, you don't need to be so strict. Offboarding is bad in CZ's eyes. More customers equals more trading fees, which means more profit. In 107, they say Binance's corporate communication strategy has attempted to publicly portray that Binance has not targeted the US, but at the same time, they knew and acknowledged behind closed doors that the opposite is true. In 2019, there was this message saying, I think I would develop it as we go along rather than saying we're blocking the US. We're preparing to launch Binance US, so we would never admit publicly or privately anywhere that we serve US customers in the first place, because we don't. So it just so happens we have a website and people sign up where we have no control over access by US customers, but we'll never admit that openly. Down to 109, we've got an internal message with CZ and Lim saying that, I know it's a pain in the ass, but it's my duty to constantly remind you. 1. We have made no mention of sanctions or support of sanctions on our platform already. And 2. Are we going to proceed to block sanctioned countries' IP addresses where we have users on the .com platform? Or do we adopt a clearer strategy after we have engaged and finalized our USA strategy? Downside risk if FinCEN or OFAC has concrete evidence that we have sanctioned users, they might try to investigate or blow it up big on the world stage. In section 110, they say 2 months later, in a December 2018 chat, Lim acknowledges that Binance was operating in the US and advised his colleague that there was no effing way in hell I'm going to be signing off as the CCO for that OFAC shit. In that same chat, Lim recognized that Binance's customer support was teaching people how to circumvent the sanctions. Not a good look. Section 115 basically just says more of what was said before. So Binance got the customer's IP address, compared it to the list of restricted jurisdictions in the US, but it had not been effective at preventing customers from restricted jurisdictions, including the US, from accessing and trading on the Binance platform. On section 117, they say Binance even published a guide on the Binance Academy section of the website, titled A Beginner's Guide to VPNs. Binance's VPN guide explained to Binance customers that if you want to be private about the websites you visit and your location, you should use a VPN. Binance VPNs also hints you might want to use a VPN to unlock sites that are restricted in your country. Section 118 says Binance senior management, including CZ, knew the Binance VPN guide was used to teach US customers to circumvent Binance's IP address-based compliance controls. And even going into 2020, there was a chat with Lim that clarified to a colleague, no, we can't change their status to non-US if they are US. That's fraud, but we can encourage them to be a non-KYC account or use a VPN. Yeah, can bypass, give a little hand, that you guys can work something out. Please be clear, we only do this for our biggest traders/VIPs. This is special treatment. Section 122 is also pretty spicy, because they basically say they were using Binance US as a laboratory to identify important US customers that could be prioritized for expedited onboarding to the Binance.com platform, meaning they're going to get people from the US platform and bring them over to the full Binance platform, where there's a bit less restrictions, less regulations, and more profit for Binance. And Lim went on to say, but they need to be doing really sick-ass volumes. We always have a way for whales. Down on section 138, using Binance's internal database, the monthly revenue report for September 2020 reflects that 2.5 million customers were located in the US. And that same month, Binance revenue report shows 310,000 Binance customers were locations in the UNKWN, or short for unknown. Now, why would it be unknown? Coming down to 139, it says in October 2020, the same month, a rival digital assets exchange and its principals were sued by the CFTC. CZ directed Binance personnel to replace the US values for certain fields in Binance's internal database with the value unknown. As a result, Binance's October 2020 monthly report identified 2.8 million customers' locations as unknown, while omitting any reference to US. So if you take a look on the chart, this section right up the top here, this big chunk right here, this is all US customers. And if we come down, we've got the same report that was filed. Oh, it says unknown for some reason. I wonder why that is. And finally, at the last section on page 59, we've got the actual violations of the CFTC Act and regulations. And it's basically just saying that they knowingly provided services to US citizens, traded on their own platform, covered up their tracks, and were super shady. Second count, illegal off-exchange commodity options. Count 3, failure to register as a future commission merchant, which is basically referring to the Binance.com platform. Count 4, failure to register as a designated contract market or swap execution facility, which is basically just another failure to register, failure to implement customer information program, and a failure to implement KYC and anti-money laundering procedures. Not so great. Anti-evasion, basically trying to willfully evade or attempt to evade the provisions of the Act and regulations, and basically goes on with a bit more waffle. And the final part, relief requested, basically saying, please US court, let us sue Binance. And that's the end of this exciting document. Now, just before I finish this, some of you may be saying, this whole case kind of sounds familiar. Well, that's because in October of 2020, the CFTC charged BitMEX, basically the biggest futures exchange in crypto, with basically the same stuff. So illegally operating a cryptocurrency derivatives trading platform and anti-money laundering violations. And I'm sure you know what happened after that. And if we take a look at the Bitcoin chart and we line up the dates, we go 1st of October, and we can see the effect, what happened on the price. Went from 10,800 all the way down to, oh my god, 10,770. And then it pretty much quadrupled in price after that over the next year. So as you can see, the CFTC is definitely going to have a big impact on the crypto space.